Chinese people just speak too fast. It just sounds like a big jumble of sounds to me. I can't even tell where one word begins and the other one ends. For a bit of background, about a month ago I put a post on Twitter and asked, what do you guys think is the most challenging aspect to reading Chinese? And contrary to popular belief, most people think it's reading, but actually in my experience and in the experience of many others, as you can see here, is actually listening comprehension. So in Chinese, listening is very hard. There's loads of very short sounds, there's a lot of homonyms, and then there's tones to deal with as well. So in today's video, I want to talk about how you can get good listening comprehension in Chinese. I'm going to go over 3 reasons why your listening comprehension might not be good, and then I'm going to go exactly how to fix that now. So the first, and you just heard the quote at the beginning, is it just sounds like a bunch of noises to me. So I can't pick out where one word starts and when one word ends. Now, one common reason for this can be that you're just used to listening to textbook Chinese. So what do I mean by this? In real language, and this is especially true for learners of English as well, there's something called connected speech. So if you analyze the way that you speak your native language, you realize that you don't actually pronounce everything clearly. Some sounds between words are merged together, sometimes it's removed, sometimes it actually changes altogether. And all this happens with almost every single sound in the language. So if you take the sentence, I want to eat an apple, if I say it like this and pronounce it like every word is supposed to be pronounced, it sounds very strange. But when you actually realize how native speakers say it, I want an apple. So when you listen to only textbook dialogues and you get used to this when every sound is pronounced clearly, when you go to real language, you feel like it's too fast, but it's not actually just a problem of it being too fast. It's also because the sounds are changing. So reason number 2 is you can actually hear the sounds, and this is already an amazing start already, but you just don't know what some words mean. This might sound quite self-explanatory, but when we're talking about listening comprehension, if you say something like, oh, I can understand 80%, it's not actually very much. Even just a few key words missing it from the main part of a dialogue can mean your overall comprehension is affected massively. So to illustrate this, I'm going to pull up an article from sinosplice.com, and they use English example with random gibberish words inserted in to illustrate what 80% comprehension actually sounds like. Bingle for help. You shout, this loopity is dying. You put your fingers on her neck. Nothing. Her flid is not weefling. You take out your Drupal and bingle 119. The emergency number in Japan. There's no answer. Then you munchie that you have a new before a single. It's from your Gudring. Evie. She hungries at Tokyo University. You play the single. If you get this, Evie says, I can't be calm now. The important pass it is. Suddenly she looks around. Dingle. Oh no, they're here. Crippet. The frib. Wasple. Them. On the frib. Beep. The single parentals. Then you go gratoon something behind you. As you can see from this, some of those you're able to gather from context, but even something as high as 80% means that's 1 in 5 words you don't know. But what you may notice is if you're proficient in English or an English native speaker, you actually heard every single sound clearly. Now this is the point that you want to get to, because you can actually hear the sound, so that means those words there you can look up easily, and once you know and can hear the sounds clearly, then learning the associated meaning becomes a lot easier later. And number 3, sometimes you hear, oh, I know every word in the sentence, but for some reason I don't understand what they're saying. So you understand all the words in the sentence, but you don't understand the sentence actual meaning. And there's 3 reasons for this as well. So the first one is grammar, that you just don't know the grammar. So number 2 is actually you think you know the meaning for that word, but in that sentence, the one that you need is actually a different meaning. So if I just think of the example flash in English, then there's going to be lots of different meanings pop up into your head. You might think a flash of a light on a camera. You might think of someone moving or running very quickly, or they were gone in a flash, and then there's also things like there's names of the superhero, the Flash. So you might know all 3 of them, and then you might see something online for the context of to flash someone, and then you think, oh, well, I know this word, so how come I don't understand what they're talking about in the context of to flash someone? Well, that's because it's a different meaning of the word that you don't know. For some technical uses of words, they might take common words and have, in the technical context, have a completely different meaning. So if we take a look at the sentence, pressure drop across the control valve can cause liquid to flash. Well, if you don't have a background in engineering, you might not know what flash means in this context. You might be thinking, well, why would a liquid, flash? When actually what it means in this context, in the context of chemical engineering, is actually completely different. The third and final reason is background knowledge. So to illustrate this point, I'm going to bring up a short clip from one of my favorite shows when I was a teenager, South Park.
That there's a Rocky Mountain black bear, one of the few remaining of its kind. Isn't it beautiful? By God, it's coming right for us!
and I'm putting up this example because I remember when I was young, I was watching this episode with my brother, and then the hunter said, "Oh my god, it's coming right at us." He shot the bear. Then my brother was laughing and I didn't get the joke. And then he linked an article to me and said, "Luke, you should look at this." And again, I'm going to just read out from this here. So this week's quote comes from Stan's uncle Jimbo, an avid hunter. He is displeased that there are laws to protect against certain endangered wildlife. However, he has found a loophole regarding the law, as it is permitted to shoot anything as long as you're about to be attacked by any creature. When he was saying, "Oh my god, it's coming right at me," and shooting the bear, then that's his way of getting around that law, and my brother knew the context for that, knew how ridiculous it is, and know the stories of people abusing that law in America for hunting purposes, and therefore he understood the satire behind the joke, whereas I did not. In summary, what we just said was there's 3 basic reasons. 1, you can't hear the sounds of the words clearly or joined words clearly. 2 is you don't know the words. 3 is you understand every word in the sentence, but you don't understand the sentence itself, which is either from grammar, background knowledge, or you getting the wrong meaning of the word. So how do you actually fix this and take it from the point, like I said earlier, when you go from not understanding anything or having everything fly over your head to coming to the point where you can understand almost everything that you listen to? So I like to take a 2-pronged approach and combine intensive with extensive listening. So what are they? So for intensive listening, you want to pick difficult content and go over it many, many times, and you want to look up all the words to try and get as close to 100% comprehension as possible. Extensive reading, on the other hand, is where you take a more laid back and more relaxed approach, and you just try to enjoy and cover as much content as possible, not worrying too much about looking things up and maybe just looking up words here and there. So why do intensive and why do extensive? With intensive listening, one of the main advantages is because it allows you to get higher comprehension levels of more difficult content, you can actually access interesting and authentic content at a much earlier stage in the learning process. And also, because you're going to be getting a lot of repetitive listening in, then you're going to be learning all of the very high frequency words because you're getting the repetition that is needed to force that into your brain, and you're hearing it spoken in the same context over and over again. And it can also be a good way to help pair up spoken language with the ways that native speakers actually say words with the written language, with how we write it. But the downside about intensive listening is that you just don't cover enough ground. If you think that you need to go over the same content many, many times to try and get a proper understanding, and then the amount of words you're going to be exposed to in that time is just not going to be enough. If your goal is to have a big vocabulary and understand a lot in the language, if you only do intensive listening, you're just not going to cover enough ground. So extensive listening, the downside to this, for extensive listening, is going to be harder to understand content at first. And also because you're not getting that repetition and you're not really stopping and taking the time to understand and dissect it, if you come across any problems, it's going to be hard to just stop, zoom in and dissect that. So it's going to be hard to narrow into specific problems that you're having. But on the flip side, the bonuses of extensive listening, you're going to be covering a lot of ground and you're going to be hearing all of these new words in context, and you're going to be getting repetition for the same words in different contexts over and over and over again. As you might have realized, the benefits and the drawbacks of both intensive and extensive listening complement each other perfectly, which is why I recommend doing both. And then if you're already doing both intensive and extensive listening and you're still struggling to expand your vocabulary, then this is where I recommend reading to come in. So again, you can be reading as much for pleasure to try and expose yourself to as much content as possible written down. And in my experience, it's a lot easier to learn words through the writing system than it is by ear alone. So what do you actually do for intensive listening? It's all well and good saying I should be extensively listening to stuff, but I just don't understand anything at the start. So I'm going to break down what I do for intensive listening into 7 main steps. So the first one is always about choosing good content at the right level for you. So as a complete beginner, you've got so much to deal with. You've got new sounds, you've got tones, you've got so much there that, in my opinion, you want to be having an easy foothold. You want an easy step into the world of Chinese that's not too intimidating and not too challenging. So what I like to do as a complete beginner is pick beginners textbooks. If you want to learn Taiwanese Mandarin, then I recommend a course in contemporary Chinese by NTNU University. If you're learning Chinese from mainland China, or you're learning simplified characters, then I've heard really good things about the Integrated Chinese series. So then, after a month or 2 of doing this with textbooks and actually getting a bit of a foothold on a language, I then think it's best to actually get away from the learner's material and do this with short videos with CC subtitles or soft subtitles on something like YouTube. How do you actually find these then on YouTube? So I'm going to leave this in the description, but what you want to do is you want to type in CC in the search bar in capital letters, comma, space, speech marks, and then inside the speech marks put in a phrase in your target language where I've just written X. What this is going to do is it's going to search YouTube for something with the phrase inside the speech marks in the CC subtitles, which is going to help you find basically videos for free with transcripts that you can use to study about content that you're interested in. In there, I'm going to put in the characters for YU, which means foreign language. So this is going to recommend content in Chinese about learning a foreign language, which I'm going to assume you're interested in if you're watching this video. So as you can see, you just click on the search button, get the results, and then you scroll down and find a video that looks interesting to you. If you click into the video, you can actually see that it has CC subtitles by clicking on the little cog there, and also the 3 dots in the bottom right. If you click on that, you can open the transcript on the right side. Now you've got the content, what do you actually do with it? So this brings me to step 2, which is to listen over many times. So first of all, you want to turn off the subtitles, and what you want to do is you want to just listen over as much times as you can, relying on just your ears. Even if you understand nothing, try and concentrate, go over a few times and see what you can actually understand. So step 2 is listen while reading the subtitles. Now, if you're a complete beginner and you're using a textbook, you might want to do this with pinyin a little bit, but I'd also encourage you to do it with the Chinese characters as well, so you can get used to pairing up the spoken language to the text. And what this does, once you get a background in Chinese characters and you actually start to get more familiar with the writing system, you're going to notice there's certain words that you do know how to read, that you couldn't hear clearly when you were listening, but when you have the text there, you go, oh, that's what they said. So the third stage is to actually then go through slowly and read the transcript and look up every single word you don't know. If you're doing it on YouTube, then you can use something like a pop-up dictionary on the transcript on the right side to look up all the unknown words you don't know. If you don't mind paying a bit of extra money, then I can also suggest the website link, because that's what I used when I first started out. And I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. So then once you've listened a few times with raw audio, you've listened a few times with subtitles, and now you've gone through and read through a few times, looking up all the words you don't know. Now in theory, when you're reading through the subtitles, you should be able to understand 100%, which means when you listen and read to the subtitles again, you should be able to understand close to 100% as well. Maybe some bits when they speak fast and you can't read it at your own pace, it might go over your head, but that's fine. Those bits you can rewind and go over a few times. So then you want to get to the point where when you listen and read to the subtitles at the same time, you understand 100% of this video. Then the last stage, and this is the most important, once you've got to that stage when you can understand with the subtitles everything that's being said, take the subtitles away. What you'll notice is bits that you could hear clearly before have for some reason become hazy and fuzzy, and you can't just quite put your finger on it, or maybe you just can't hear the sounds clearly. Again, this is because you're not used to the way the native speakers actually say these words. After you listen a few times, just keep listening over and over, you're going to notice more and more each time. And then the bits that you still can't get, go back and refer to the subtitles, have a look at what they're saying, then turn the subtitles off again and just have a listen on loop and see if you can pick out the sounds without the help of the subtitles eventually, to try and hear the sounds clearly for what's actually being said. So how do you review all the words then? And how do you keep it in your head? So the step number 7, and this is also quite an important thing that I think, is to make use of passive listening. So all the videos that you went through, whether it's dialogues from a language textbook or videos on YouTube, you want to basically download onto a device, whether it's a phone, a tablet, an iPod, whatever. You want to have all the audio in one place. Then when you're walking around, you're walking to work, or you're on the bus, or you're washing the dishes, put headphones on and practice listening to that content in loop, put it on a playlist, and you can get all the vocabulary refreshed over and over again. This is not only going to help remember words, but it's also going to improve your listening. So then extensive listening. I want to get into extensive listening as a beginner, but I just can't understand anything. What do I do? I'm going to give 4 tips that I think would help in this situation. So the first one goes for a no-brainer. Pick something simple. And then point number 2 will be when you're extensive listening at first, and I'm stressing at first, when you're getting into it, you want to be listening with target language subtitles. Now, a lot of people disagree with this for saying the reason that, oh, well, if you put on the subtitles, you're not practicing listening, you're just relying on the subtitles. But I completely disagree with this, and here's why. 1, you can pair up the spoken sound to the written language, which is going to help you actually learn how things are pronounced and how words are actually pronounced, like I mentioned earlier, which is going to have a huge help. And the second reason is that if you've got different ways of picking up a word through visual and audio context, you're going to find it easier to learn new words. And in my opinion, the biggest challenge when learning any new language is just getting your vocabulary up to the point where you can actually start to try and understand these things. So in my opinion, it's way more important to focus on building up your vocabulary from the start and getting engaged in the content. So the third thing would be lots of visual clues. And then point number 4 is that it's fun, even if you can't understand very much. So then examples of what do I like? What did I actually listen to when I was a beginner in Chinese, to give some examples. The first thing that I liked was content that is using Chinese to teach English. So If I know English and they're throwing in English words here and there or phrases to teach it, but then 80 to 90% of the content is in Chinese, again, the English acts as giving me some sort of context for what's going on and makes it easier for me to understand. So a YouTuber that I liked was Adi Ingwen. I'll leave a link to his YouTube channel in the description. Another thing that I like, and this is something that I've discovered recently, but I think it would be useful for beginners as well, if you watch content of people reacting to English videos in Chinese. So there's a YouTuber from Shanghai, I think his name is something like Shilan. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, and a lot of his videos, either he uses phrases of English here and there or like words of English when he's speaking, or the content that he's reacting to is English. Another thing that I like is dubs of anime or something like that in a target language. So one thing that I liked was an anime called Hajime no Ippo. It's my favorite show. I watched it a few times before I started learning Chinese. So watching the Chinese dub, because I know the plot quite well, I know the characters quite well, there's a lot of visual context and the fight scenes are very well choreographed and it's very enjoyable. I can get a lot out of it even though I can't understand that much. And then the last thing, if you don't like any of the things that I recommended so far, then one thing you can try is first watch a TV show with English subtitles, then go through and watch maybe 3 or 4 shows, and then you build up that catalogue of shows that you have a general understanding of and that you have a general context for and kind of understand the world for, or understand the plot for. And then later down the line, if you go back and watch that with Chinese subtitles, you're going to be understanding a lot more, and because you know the story and the characters, you're going to be able to pick up a lot more words. So thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. It's been Luke Truman about why you find it hard to understand Chinese and how to fix it. If you think the video was useful, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. If you have a friend that's learning Chinese, if you have someone that's learning a language and finds listening particularly difficult, then send this video to them or anyone that you think it may be helpful to. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everyone who's watched it this far, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.